and the person who is sitting behind you in the fast travel pass office is clearly 3 kids in a trench coat, and their name tag is their name tag is an adult, and they do the fucking BoJack Horseman Vincent Adult Man shtick where they're just like business taxes, I love to eat vegetables even though my mom I hate them. Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where 2 long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm a Phil Bucket.
And this week, we grab our paintbrushes in Chicory, A Colorful Tale. Before we get wrecked by impostor syndrome, remember you can help us on Mortified, the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for a monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter and Tumblr at MortifiedPod. Leyla.
Aaron.
You're something of an artiste. Is that right?
I think something of an artiste is like a very good way to put that. Yes.
How would you put it?
Something. I don't know, man. I already knew I was going through a transitional period in my life, and this game, really had me processing some things. You're a writer. How's that going?
I'm a writer in the sense that I have a lot of Google Docs. I don't want to claim that title until I, feel like it. But, so this game came out in, June of 2021, and it popped up on some Game of the Year conversations, and, it came up on my radar because of those conversations. I was like, Leyla might like this game, I think, and because it basically... It is it's a Zelda-like, platformer in some parts, but mostly just like a puzzle-solving adventure game where your main verb is using a paintbrush to interact with the environment. And, they talk a lot about art and, legacy and expectations and what all that shit means. And I was like, Leyla will probably have some emotional response to this, which, would you say that's true?
I spent the first 30 minutes of gameplay just weeping a little bit. Nothing particularly happens. You are a little dog. You name yourself a food. Aaron was cookies. I was bread. And then I was just anxious at first. And then I started wondering... when the last time drawing brought me joy, and then I just cried for a while. So that's... Is that the answer you were looking for?
Yeah, no, we had feelings about it. For the plot summary, so like Leyla was saying, yeah, you are a cute little dog. I named my dog Cookies, and Leyla, you named your dog Bread.
It asked for my favorite food.
I mean, listen, very valid. You're a janitor for at this tower, which is like the legendary Wielders of the Brush Tower, which is where all these like very famous and powerful like artists that control the one brush that paints color into the world. That's where they live and practice their craft and whatever. And you're a janitor there. One day you see the magical, powerful brush on the ground. All the color's been drained out of the world, and you're like, that's bad. But you pick up the brush. The person that currently is the wielder, Chicory, is nowhere to be found. You solve this crisis. There's a bunch of weird trees, and the thing that happened with me was that I walked into this tree, and I was like, wow, it's all dark. This is weird. And then, 6 glowing eyeballs appeared and scared the shit out of me. And I was like, oh my God, it's going to be one of these games. And, then it was pretty, not very intense after that, but it was fine. And the story basically follows, your dog, Cookies and Bread, going throughout the world and figuring out, why these weird evil trees are popping up. You pretty much, you meet Chicory's former mentor, Blackberry, who is like, you better give that brush back right away. Chicory has to come and resolve this. You go to return the brush, and Chicory's like, actually, you can keep it. I don't want the brush. So you're like, okay, I'm the next wielder. This is great. You continue to fight these corruptions, but like it doesn't kill the tree. It's dark. Smaller trees continue to spread. The color isn't really coming back. You're able to paint it into the world, but it's not completely resolved. Finally, you get to one of these boss trees, and you meet a shadow version of Chicory herself, and she's just like, oh, well, you're a joke. And, I'm just glad I got rid of the stupid brush. You don't actually have any talent. We're not friends. You're just the janitor. And when you go back to confront Chicory and you're like, that wasn't real, right? Chicory's like, leave me alone. Like, she does not deny it at all. And that's like I think it's very good. But also it's like pretty brutal to experience. You're just like, all right, shit. And then you deal with the emotional, consequences of that. You go back and you talk to your family, you talk to people who you care about, and you're like, okay, they're like, Chicory was wrong to say that, but also something's going on with her. Eventually Chicory comes and apologizes to you and says, hey, I'm sorry that those things came out. It's not some stuff that I would have said. It's just the manifestation of my doubts or whatever. I'm going to train you to be the next wielder. You do a bunch of trials to become a cool wielder. You get to be better friends with Chicory. And in the end, you go and you fight the corruption at the very top of the wielder tower, which is like, pretty pretty literal as far as metaphors are concerned. You lose. You're defeated by the darkness. It takes the brush back. And then you are just like, well, shit. I don't know what I'm going to do now. You go back and find Chicory, and, you all are like, well, it looks like the world's ending. But because of the experiences you've had, the ways that you've learned to appreciate yourself and others and, what it means to be an artist, you're able to manifest a new brush. You go back in and fight the darkness. Chicory also is able to manifest a new brush. And you defeat it, and that's it. Hooray. Nothing complicated about that at all.
No, not really. It was pretty straightforward. But that's what made it really good, in terms of gameplay. It didn't overcomplicate itself. Do we want to talk about characters?
Yeah, let's get into it. How do you feel about how is your experience of being Bread?
I love bread. I would die for bread.
Yes, I think it's very smart of them to be like, you're a person who is like a fan of Chicory, right? Your player character is somebody who was always idolized Chicory. They ostensibly, for whatever reason, they wanted to work in the tower, even if it was, like a janitorial job. I don't know if that's. I think Bread's like whole motivation is like they didn't know what they want to do in life. So they're like, okay, I'll be a janitor, and I'll at least still be able to work in the tower, and that'll be cool. And that's not to denigrate people who have janitorial jobs, obviously, but like I think it's just a reflection of how your player character doesn't know how to feel, and they just kind of want to be close to people who seem important to them. And like having them have the response to Chicory, which is like, oh, I've idolized you for so long, and then once you meet them, you get that, okay, never meet your idols moment. And also like it didn't strike me as like Cookie's having any sort of art training. Did you get that? Like, because I know her sister goes to the art school, but did you get any of that sense?
No, and I think that's why I went into a trance about like art bringing joy for a second there before the summary, because there is no pretense. It's just like, oh, here's this tool. I want to make something. And I think like in terms of Chicory and the sister, also Clementine, you see that people who have like studied this and wanted this, like there's a different, they kind of forget that instinct, which is true of a lot of people. But yeah, I didn't pick up on any like beyond maybe an elementary school art class, it was just fun.
And I think that's what makes that character powerful and, kind of nails in the message of the game. But yeah, they're just like kind of an everyday person that gets caught up in this weird event that's way bigger than them, and learns to help themselves and help other people, and pretty solid protagonist that is nice and kind and just wants to be good, and we love them.
Yes. Chicory
is a lot more complicated than that. Chicory is a rabbit. I don't know if we said that, but And like Chicory's whole story is that she's like, like Leyla said, wanted to be this, great wielder for forever. She just knew it, right? She knew her purpose in life was to become the greatest painter, to become the wielder, and be the kind of person that changes the world. And when she finally gets the brush, she realizes that there's a lot more to that, and actually a lot less of that. There is both more in that everybody will constantly demand things from you, and comment on the way that you work in a very public way, whether or not you are asking for that comment. And also less in that there is less support, less structure. It's very lonely at the top, and that once you've achieved your goal, why were you even trying to get here? Now looking around at what Chicory's life has become, she's unsure why she even wanted to be the brush wielder in the first place. Now seeing that her taking on the brush has caused this destruction. And I think that the smartest thing that this game does, as you point out in your notes, Leyla, is makes Chicory have these flaws and makes her a complicated person that like lashes out at other people.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought this up in your notes in the summary earlier too. Is just Chicory doesn't deny the like nasty things that Shadow Chicory says. Like those are clearly thoughts she's had, which, hey, we're all people. We've thought some nasty fucking things. We're not proud of it. But it's, it's the way you act and kind of combat that nasty little goblin instinct that matters, right? And for Chicory, she, like, really puts a visible effort to fight through her own corruption and to, increasingly be there for Cookies, Bread, the main character, which is really admirable, and you get to kind of see her come back on her feet. I thought the more touching moment was with her when you go to one of the trials. I think it's the one at the canyon, the one that she didn't finish with Blackberry. Yeah. And she admits that she's like, I'm scared. I didn't finish this trial myself. This one's going to be tough for me. And asks for like support for the first time. So I thought that was a really nice moment. You get to see Chicory grow a lot, which is really cool. It's really humanizing, in a story where like her part in it is very much, one of the messages is don't put people up on a pedestal because, don't meet your heroes. You don't know what's going on with them. Speaking of Blackberry.
Yeah, Blackberry doesn't play a huge role in this, but we see her in a couple crucial moments. We see her when she realizes that, the main character wasn't given the brush by Chicory. She just kind of took it, and we get the sense that she is like very stern and, no nonsense, very, demanding. She like has these like side comments of being like, I don't understand, why Chicory would let this happen. I just don't get her. It's her responsibility to fix this. And she comes across as very cold, which, she is. But then like in one of the like fights you have, one of the boss fights, like Blackberry is there and is like pretty, like we get a shadow version of Blackberry, but we see, the confrontation that, Blackberry had with Chicory. We see Chicory being like, well, I can't believe you're not going to give this brush to me, because, Blackberry deemed that she'd failed the trial. And Blackberry, once Chicory runs away, Blackberry says, I'm a monster, and like turns into a literal monster. And so we get the sense that like, that having that at the very end kind of shows what the game has been trying to reinforce, which is that, the passing down the legacy of greatness or whatever, this brush, a physical manifestation of expectations of, an artist, it does things to people.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there's been a ton of wielders, and you meet, we have Clementine on this list, we might as well.
Cardamom? Clementine's your sister, right? Yeah.
Or okay. Cardamom, yeah. Yeah, Cardamom. Sorry, they're all named after food.
Yeah, you'll notice a theme. You live in the world of Picnic. It's a cute theme.
It's adorable. But yeah, Cardamom is another former wielder, who you talked to a little bit more than I did, but he also carries a lot of, like, baggage with regards to having been a wielder.
Yeah, I think Cardamom, he again doesn't say a whole lot in this, but like the thing that stood out most to me was his bit where he was talking about the time between him realizing he no longer wanted to be the wielder and finding a person to pass the brush onto, and he was like, that was the worst time because like he was stuck in between, the expectations and duties of a wielder, and also the fact that he like hated his life and also knew that he was going to be passing the brush on to someone else. And like I thought that was a very specific and distinct characterization, because I'm sure a lot of listeners understand what it's like to be like, I don't want to do this anymore, but I have to continue doing it.
Yeah, and if you don't, you live the blessed and beautiful life. Mm-hmm. I wish I were you. Who's next?
Your parents, I think. I think they're just mom and dad.
Yes. Which your dad's a raccoon.
Yes, I want to talk about that because there's a hint system in the game. That your parents are introduced by like these phone booths that are everywhere, and you can call them and get hints. I really like this hint system because your mom shows up and she's like, okay, yeah, let me give you a generic but like not too. It's kind of a vague hint. It's like, here's what you need to do. You need to go to Blackberry. You need to find this next tree. You need to go to this town or whatever. And then she's like, oh, there's a hand that reaches out, and he's like got his little fingers like twitching for the phone. And she's like, oh, your dad wants to talk. He gives the most detailed advice, like very clearly being like, this is going to be like a very specific hint. Like telling the player that directly. And she's like, should I put him on, or do you feel like you don't need this hint? And most of the time, the first couple hours, I was like, oh, I don't need it. But then I was like, oh, actually, I feel bad leaving my dad, off the hook. I'm gonna say, yeah, I'll talk to him. I don't need this hint or whatever. Smash cut to this raccoon. I was like, wait, my dad's a raccoon. Very funny. But yeah, I your parents are, they don't play a huge part, but they're supportive and they're kind, and they you get to hang out with them sometimes.
Yeah, I found out that dad was a raccoon because I made it all the way to potluck before I ever even took a phone call with him. And he caught me outside of the donut shop that he owns, which designing that donut was one of my favorite. It's just design a super fancy donut that could not be physically possible, and brought me a great deal of glee. But he started talking to me, and he was like, okay, I'll see you at home, kid. And I was like, what?
No. Who are you?
And I went to my parents' house, and I saw my mom and my raccoon dad. It's like, what?
Listen, we're all fans of, multiracial, biracial characters here. It is very funny to me that you, your mom, and your sister are all like dogs, golden retrievers, and your dad's a raccoon. I was like, I guess, I mean, adoptive families are a thing, but like, it's very rare that the dad is adopted.
Yeah, just a stepdad. I don't know, but I love that raccoon. I think he's very funny, and his little hand animation on the phone call is it's good. There's also you just mentioned your sister Clementine. I love Clementine. Talking to her was always really comfortable or comforting, and I liked having some of like my favorite moments in games. Period, are just like hanging out. And going to get a slice with Clementine and going to get a donut with Chicory were like some of my favorite moments in the game, especially because Clementine was like, hey buddy, are you like okay? and the main character is like, making it through. Mm-hmm. And Clementine is like, you don't have to say yes to everyone. Is that what's happening? Are people just coming up to you and asking you for things? Is that why you're so stressed? And I was like, yes. In real life, absolutely yes. People just come up and ask me for things, and I feel compelled to say yes. And that is why I'm so stressed, Clementine. I don't need this from a 2D golden retriever right now. But she's a delight, and I always like running into her.
Yeah, I think Clementine is kind of like the platonic ideal of what this game wants an artist to be, right? She is one of those people who attends school at the academy and is like very, she's interested in art. She likes art, but she's also not like, when you tell her that you're the wielder, she congratulates you. She's proud of you, but like, she doesn't like she's not jealous. She doesn't like care. She's only concerned about your health and safety, which is an interesting foil to her friend Radish, who, if you took classes at the art academy, her friend is extremely jealous, and it's just like, wow, this is the new wielder, and like is very giving you a lot of side eye. And I think that's an interesting pairing, and it shows that like your sister is very much like the kind of person that you would hope that not only a family member but like any other person who you are close to in a creative field to be like, yeah, creating is great, it's important, and also it shouldn't be everything, and you should feel completely 100% comfortable being like, I don't want to do this thing for you.
Yeah, and the thing with Radish is interesting too, because especially in like creative fields, but I mean in most things, you get told that you work hard enough, you put the time in, you put the hours in, you'll like get wherever you want to be. And like you understand Radish's frustration with the fact that she is putting the work in and she wanted to be the wielder, and then someone else just happens to be at the right place at the right time and like falls into the opportunity. So you kind of understand the resentment, but the way she handles it is so messy that it's just you want her to maybe be a little, to maybe evaluate that for herself,
Yeah.
Ask herself some questions.
The thing is that like that's me though. Like I 100% get the instinct to be like, I've worked very, very hard, especially when you come from like an honors student bubble, and it's just like, I did everything right and I still haven't been given my A, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, the honors student bubble, I think, is one of the single most insidious causes of like mental health issues in people our age. Because man, we've been out of high school for 10 years almost.
10 years for you, yeah, and gonna be 10 years for me.
Yeah, because I'm a year. I'm a year ahead, and still untangling some of those webs 10 years later. And still haunted by
literally the first
things.
Like creative thing I ever wrote was about somebody who graduated as a valedictorian and then was like, well, that didn't mean anything. What do I do with my life now? That was the first novella I ever wrote. So yeah, still now I didn't write it that long ago either, so still working through that, I think.
Yeah, I think we'll be unpacking that damage for a very long time. I think we're on the other notable characters.
Let's start with Peppermint, I think, and we'll ease into Eucalyptus. But like, yeah, so Peppermint is basically just like this little bird who follows you around, and like when you start the game, you get the opportunity to design a t-shirt, like a custom tee. And like Peppermint, this little bird.
What did you draw?
I just drew a star with some lines on it, because I was like, whatever. What'd you draw?
I did like a Starry Night type, and a couple of stars. It was cute.
Cute. I think it's very funny that we both went for stars.
We're on brand.
But Peppermint like wears that shirt everywhere and like basically follows you to like all the towns, and it's like, oh my god, it's your name. I can't believe that you're here. This is so cool. I wore a shirt, and like later on when you as a wielder, you get to make your own self-portrait, and that's fun. But Peppermint will come up to you and it's like, hey, I did my own take on your self-portrait. And I loved that bit. It's like, oh my god, this is so perfect. Like it is an encapsulation of like how, you as somebody who is like, doesn't feel like they've earned their place, being validated by somebody who you like not a very long time ago were. It's very cute, and like you get the opportunity to like make a comment about it, and like if you don't say like, oh, I love this so much, you're a fucking monster. But like, yeah, I love Peppermint.
I'm so excited for you to publish something that goes out, and for you to get your first piece of fan art.
Yeah, no, I'll like tear my shirt off and run screaming around the apartment. Like one day, fingers crossed. But yeah, Peppermint's great. I just wanted to bring up Beans because Beans is just like very funny to me. So you can collect little cats around the world, and you could trade them in for like furniture. But Beans runs the adoption zone because like all these kids got separated from their families, and Beans is just trying to reunite them. And it's very funny because Beans is just like, I have so much stuff in my house, but now I'm just managing all these stupid kids. And I just thought it was very cute to see this haggard old cat just being like trying to corral all these kittens.
Well, Beans is funny because, you meet her for the first time and she's just like, hey, my kids are lost. Can you if you see them, can you just bring them back? And then you come back to luncheon and Beans is like, hey, I did a head count. These are not all my kids.
I had way fewer kids than this.
I got more kids than I think I bargained for. But what am I supposed to do? Put them outside again? No. I'm going to wait here for their parents.
Oh, yeah.
It's so funny because honestly, that's what I would do. I would just end up with too many kittens in my house. Which one was Prunus?
So, a very minor character, but very funny for me. Prunus is the bug ambassador when you go down to the bug zone. I loved Prunus because, basically, Prunus is trying to translate all the bug language for you, and as much as I hated the bug zone because I have a terrible bug fear, Prunus made it worth it because Prunus was just this is I kind of felt useless as the bug ambassador because you're literally the first non-bug person to ever come out here, and there's some very because when you talk to the NPCs before Prunus translates for you, they just spit out a bunch of symbols. But once Prunus is given, the duty of translating for you, all the bug people are very friendly and they're just like, oh, well, actually they're a little bit racist to you sometimes, which is weird. But there's one point where, Prunus is just like, oh, they're talking about how excited I was to become the bug ambassador and how fascinated I was with upside culture, and I can't. I'm not gonna translate that. And I'm just like, thank you, Prunus. I love you.
Did you, once you got Prunus, because Prunus starts living on your head after you go to feast, did you go visit the meditating spider in the woods?
No, I did not see this.
So there's a cave in the woods that I went into, and before you get Prunus, you try to talk to the spider that's in there, but you can't understand her. She speaks bug. And then once you get Prunus, the first thing I did the moment I hit the surface again was I ran to the woods to that cave. I was like, what is the spider doing? Does she have something? Can I exchange trash? And she's just like, hey, I just come here to meditate. So if you want to come chill with me sometimes, you come meditate with me. I was like, oh, that's so nice.
It is nice.
A lot of opportunities for you to just sit, float, enjoy the scenery in this game. It's delightful.
Yeah, this game is not there are definitely parts where I got frustrated, and I definitely used the IGN guide to get me through it. But there are a lot of very fun, quiet moments, and this game is not punishing in the way that you might expect from other games. There is a moment where you can try to get a fast travel pass, and the person who is sitting behind you in the fast travel pass office is clearly three kids in a trench coat, and their name tag is their name tag is an adult, and they do the fucking BoJack Horseman Vincent Adult Man shtick where they're just business taxes, I love to eat vegetables even though my mom I hate them, and it's just all right. And then hey, can we have your fast travel pass? And I was like, I guess. And then they took it and ran, and I was like, well, fuck, I guess I have to go track them down. And I spent the next 5 hours of the game without a fast travel pass, and I was like, and then I finally found them, and I was like, hey, give me my fast travel pass back, and the game wouldn't let me, and I was like, this is fucking horse shit. And then I went back, and it turns out I could have just turned around and talked to the guy at the desk, and he would have been like, did you just give that fast travel pass to those kids? That's illegal, you know that, right? I don't give a shit. Do you want another one? And I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah, and the fast travel pass sequence is cute too, because you get to pose yourself and get dressed up and all that stuff, which was delightful to me. I saw a couple of your screenshots of Cookies running around with her shades, looking like a cool skater girl.
Yeah. I did the match the outfits. There's a guy who will give you cool sunglasses if you bring him specific outfits. And I just was like, yeah, I'm gonna get the ladder glasses for sure.
I wore a big mushroom hat most of the time. Just a big old fungus.
It's extremely good.
So we've backed ourselves into eucalyptus and parsley.
Yeah, okay. There is one sequence in this game that like basically fucking punched me in the gut out of nowhere. So you're just like exploring and you see this you see this koala and he's like kind of sitting and looking at the river and looking kind of sad. So you go up and talk to him and he's like, "Yeah, my friend passed away and I just been feeling kind of sad and I miss them and if you see any flowers, could you bring them there?" And I was like, okay. And like I had flowers from selling my trash, and so I planted them, and eucalyptus was like, "Oh my god, I'm so moved." Like they literally clasped their hands to their mouth, and they're just like, I can't even speak. I'm so moved by this." And I was just like holding back tears like, "Hey, Chicory, I didn't come to this game for this."
Yeah, this happened to me I think within 10 minutes of me trading in a bunch of my trash for flowers when I was running around dinner for a while. And I came down and, eucalyptus was hanging out down there, and I had the same response. It was just the biggest gut punch in the world. And I had just bought all these flowers. So I was like, yeah, take them. Fucking, there's not a lot of room in front of my house. Here, take it. Please stop crying. I'm so sad right now. Mm-hmm. Which was a great contrast to the rooftop party sequence. Did you do that?
Yeah, I didn't go back to it, but I was just like, oh yeah, I bought a bunch of, no, that was a different one. I just had some of the beach party stuff that I set up and he was like very, very excited about. How did that play out for you?
I had the camping set from Beans, because I had only wanted it for like a couple of items for my house. So I had like a tent and a bunch of stuff, and I just like threw it all around and colored everything in. Because at that point I had the fill bucket and I was just filling everything colors. I was like, hell yeah. It was sky is the color. Yeah, everything's in color now. And he seemed so hype. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad that my spare furniture could be of assistance to you.
Now, there is one more furniture sequence. Did you do the murder mystery?
I was I started it, but then I was looking at the clock and I had to finish the game so we could record this program. But I did fill the presidential suite with a bunch of furniture.
Okay, I did that too, and I'd used all the furniture from the bug zone, so it's just like mushrooms and logs and shit up there.
There's mushroom posters all over mine too.
Yeah, hell yeah, put the worm posters up there. Fucking presidential suite. Fun fact about the murder mystery.
Oh no.
So if you collect all the clues, there's one person who has like, a lot of like evidence smeared all over their cave, and there's like chests in his room, and he when you ask him about his hobbies, he says, "My hobbies are stealing and video games." And then when you go to solve it, it was like, well, it's clearly that guy. And he's like, no, actually, it wasn't me. And we're like, really? And then the person who is like the concierge at the restaurant, it like breaks out and admits that they spilled some stuff on it and they were trying to wash out all the furniture in the river, and then they just got it all wet and they had to throw it out. That's just very funny.
That's how I'm going to start introducing myself when people are like, oh, Leyla, what do you like to do? I'll be like, stealing in video games.
And I'm all out of video games.
Because that is, if you've ever heard me talk about my scam Sonia, that is true.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, how did we feel about, I guess I wanted to talk about the ways in which Chicory, like, mechanically reinforced its themes. So, like, the main verb you have here is painting, right? And, I'm going to be borrowing from both Maddie Myers of Polygon and Rebecca Valentine of IGN. Both of their reviews, but, like, basically they brought up the point that, like, you cannot color in the whole world. It's just too big. Like, you could probably, but it would take, like, hours and hours, even with the paint bucket. And, like, I think it's very interesting to do a game where it's, present these kind of tools to you, and then, try to make you think about what it's like to be a creative and, like, demand, be in a position where your excellence is demanded of you, and also, encourage you to not, go the extra mile. But also, like, I felt weird about how there were achievements in this game.
Yeah, so I think I'm a really big fan of games that, I think I've said this before, that let you kind of get as much involvement in the mechanics as you want in that moment. So I think in terms of like, use, the main verb being painting, you don't have to spend, you have the option of slowing down and maybe decorating one of the screens to some extent, but like, you don't have to. You can just kind of fill bucket your way through it. You don't even have to touch it most of the time unless there's like something that you have to color in so that you kind of like mechanically progress through a puzzle, like the dot puzzles. But for me personally, like, I just mostly did a couple of rounds of fill bucket on most screens just to have a little bit of color. But I really enjoyed being able to, like, especially during dialogue scenes, you can still draw while the other characters are talking, which for a person with more than likely ADHD, like me, who hates sitting still during dialogue scenes, being able to, like, gently scribble was really, really nice. And so I ended up with a map where, like, the places where I took the most time and, like, got the most color were the places that I enjoyed being the most. Which I think is really central to, like, supporting the fact that the main goal of this game is to paint.
Yeah, I definitely like the ways in which Chicory does give you, the option to be like, yeah, I'm not going to engage with, this as a coloring book, but also does encourage you to just, like, whatever you find most interesting, that's where you can spend your time. I think you made a very interesting point about, when there's a point where you and Chicory draw each other in a self-portrait. And I was hoping you could talk about the point you made, which is like the tools that you have are not equivalent to Chicory's.
Yeah, Chicory has, like, volume in her painting, She has, like, opacity and brush pressure. Like, these things are not available to you. You're, like, MS painting your way with a mouse through drawing Chicory. But you draw her first, so there's no expectation of, like, having to match something. And then, she gives you a drawing of you that is, like, much more advanced than the game will even let you do, which in a video game I think is interesting in and of itself, because so many RPGs especially are caught up with making player progression feel convincing, feeling like you as the player are, like, your skill is increasing in a way that, like, even if you're not getting any better at the game yourself, like, your character's upgrades make you feel that way, give you that sense of accomplishment. Chicory doesn't even try to do that. One of the other interesting things about that sequence that I made a note of on your notes was when you were fighting Chicory, Chicory's pain was pink. What did you say your favorite color was?
Blue?
I said my favorite color was pink, and her pain when she's fighting was blue. I think that Chicory will pick whatever the inverse of the color wheel is of whatever you say in that moment.
That's cool.
Yes, I think that's very, very neat. And I think that there's another, I think Blackberry or maybe Cardamom, somebody else, I think it moves over to a compliment on the color wheel for their thing. So it's just really cool. I thought it was a really, really nice touch to, like, have it be the inverse of whatever you said.
Yeah, I mean, the art direction in this game is, of course, very impressive. I mean, besides the fact that all the animals are very cute and, look like they would all live in the same world together, depending on the, like, scene or screen you're in, your color palette changes from the 4 colors you have available to you. And, like, I just, as somebody who has zero knowledge about art, and, like, I just, like, had the paint bucket and I was like, okay, I have 4 options and they're all going to be roughly look good together. I really appreciated that.
And for a person who does have art knowledge, like, it took a lot of the pressure off of making it look, quote unquote, good. Like, I still caught myself a lot of the times, like, trying to get something to look balanced, but I don't know. I felt a lot more at ease scribbling at the end of the journey and just, like, having a little bit of fun, poking some trees to shake a kitten out of it.
Yeah, but, as you say, you do have a lot of art knowledge, Layla, and the point that you wanted to bring up here is like, because of the art knowledge, how do you feel that like that knowledge, pressures gives you I mean, you were talking about it just now. You had a lot of pressure in there would have been pressure if you had a greater palette to make everything look appropriate. And like, I'm wondering how you felt about the way that this game, talks about the outside pressure of, being good at something versus the internal sense of like what you owe to everyone else / yourself.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, this game definitely gave me, like I said earlier in the podcast, like anxiety in the beginning, like blank canvas anxiety, just like staring at something incomplete. But yeah, I think that the outside pressure thing is like a really obvious, thing at the core of this game, which is like, everyone you talk to has a fucking opinion about what you're doing and how they would do it. I really liked Pickles, the fox, because I don't know if he's in the corner of luncheon, and he's fun to talk to because he doesn't take anything seriously, and he asks to use the brush for a second, and he draws his own face in the grass when you give it to him, and then he's like, yeah, I see how you're doing. I would do it differently, but like, LOL, whatever, have fun. And like, characters like that for me were the most fun to talk to. But I think the more interesting thing it gets at, like you said, was the internal pressure, especially as seen through Chicory and as seen through Cookie / Bread, where like the better you get at a thing, the more you feel like you owe everyone else a piece of your hard work, which I think goes beyond art and, dare I say, to return to one of our very common threads here on this podcast as two biracial children of immigrants, just as you get older and as you get better at being an adult, just having not only other people leverage responsibility upon yourself, but having an internal sense of constant guilt that forces you to say yes all the time. Would you agree with that assessment, that those two feelings are alike?
Yeah, I mean, they do seem to come up a lot for some reason.
A reason unknown to both of us.
But I am wondering, if there is something, because the end of Chicory, the brush is destroyed. There is something of a metaphor about like destroying the institution of the wielder and helping everybody grow their own brushes, etc. I'm wondering if the things that Chicory is trying to get across, the ways in which it's saying, we should try to get away from, establishments and auteurs and, try to define what art is for each individual person. I mean, do you feel like there is a level, because of your background, because of your experience in the industry, do you feel like, that those institutions are, still standing, or do you feel like that space is really in the space where Chicory is, and it has moved on from these weird notions that like of perfection, of artists being only one thing and having to be perfect for everyone and also for themselves?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd have trouble answering that, only because like even having this conversation, like I am just sitting here like presently wrangling my imposter syndrome like into place, because I don't feel like, even having had multiple years education, a degree, and a couple of years working professionally in the field, I say a couple, 5 if you count my freelance, I still don't feel comfortable answering on a professional level. Like I still don't feel like an artist. And so I think that there is a lot of desire for like that sort of decentralizing and trying to redefine what the craft like means for every individual. But like, I don't know whether or not how deep that conversation is going. You can't have it in isolation in terms of like the real world. You can't have it just on its own. You have to talk about every force of negative, like evil that is currently affecting everything else, colonialism, capitalism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I do want to know, there's a very difficult conversation you have to have with Chicory right before you go fight the evil at the top of the tower, where Chicory first suggests destroying the brush. How did that go for you?
So I was a little bit frustrated by that because I didn't see that the brush was going to, come back, right? I didn't call that plot point. So I tried to do everything in my power to not destroy the brush until I ran out of options. And I was like, well, I guess we're destroying the brush then, which I was a little bit disappointed by.
I found that conversation frustrating too, because it puts you in a position of defending the institution, because you have, basically, you have the opportunity to ask the question, like, okay, but if the brush is destroyed, does all color in the world go away? And Chicory's like, yeah, probably eventually, but isn't it better to be safe than to live in a world full of color? And in that moment, you have to ask yourself, like, what amount of risk is worth, like, art?
Yeah, and I mean, that is a big question, one that is constantly, undergirding conversations about discourse. I mean, fucking the boyfriend dungeon convo was not that long ago. Like, we are always talking about, this is where we talk about, content warnings and, ratings for movies. And like, there's no clear-cut answer really, besides just like, you should let people know what they're getting into, probably.
Yeah.
And, it is very interesting framing to be like, to make you, I mean, I think that's also, setting narrative stakes, like, oh, if you destroy the brush, the world will not have color anymore. Setting that audience expectation that like, you're going to be making a very drastic and final choice in the world. But yeah, I mean, it is a weird way to be like, hey, this terrible evil thing, you have to defend it now.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you write a lot of stories that tackle some topics that are I'll say tricky, right? Like colonialism, etc. I'm working on a story about mental illness. Do you think that Chicory has something to say about holding creators and artists to an impossible standard in terms of like even having the ability to make mistakes?
I mean, I think it is definitely coming down in favor of artists. I mean, I think just because of like the ways in which the NPCs that are critical of you, they aren't critical in a way where they are like misinterpreting your art, because that isn't really that sort of game. Or like, the citizens of Picnic aren't, also like bad faith actors. Like everybody in Picnic is completely sincere in whatever criticism they have of you, right? And unfortunately, that's not the world we live in, right? There's not somebody, there's not like a mean walrus who's just like, hey, I'm gonna make fun of all of Bread's art because that way it'll get me 1,000 Twitter followers every time I tweet. Like, unfortunately, the conversations we have are definitely complicated by media. And the ways in which we have these conversations. But yeah, I mean, I do think the things that Chicory is saying are very much like, yeah, people do hold artists to a very high standard. You should not put anybody on a pedestal. And like, we should be pretty forgiving of people who try very, very hard to accomplish something and are, never completely satisfied, either because their work is not received well or because they personally do not feel like it was enough.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment for everyone except J.J. Abrams. I'll get over that feeling in about a month, but for right now, January 2022, I'm still mad at that man.
Listen, we could punch up at Mr. Abrams and Mr. Cameron. They will listen when Avatar 2 comes back. We gonna be putting those critic gloves back on.
This is a podcast that picks sides. We are pro Hugh Jackman. We are anti James Cameron and J.J. Abrams. Oh, Boise, Idaho.
Listen, I would rather have Hugh Jackman in my. If I was going to have a fight between if if I had to choose between those three people, and the one person I chose would have to help me fight the other two people, I would pick Hugh Jackman 100% of the time.
I would also pick Hugh Jackman.
I bet I could fight J.J. Abrams. I'm 5'7" and like 150 pounds, and like I could probably fight J.J. Abrams because I think he's probably about the same physically as me. He's a big nerd.
I feel like I could squat J.J. Abrams, and if I'm ever given the opportunity, I fucking will.
You heard it here first. Mortified will fight J.J. Abrams.
Unless he wants to pay us vast amounts of money. In which case,
yeah,
I
we
take
recant all that
back.
shit.
Where are we?
I was wondering, for our marketing minute, I think, listeners should call in. Our hotline is 775-573-8882. And I was just wondering, if you could pitch an extremely metaphorical game about your field of work, what that might look like. I mean, Chicory is a little bit like that for you because of your work in art, but I think more as you transition into a production role, I'm wondering what you think that might look like. And I'll give you a moment to consider that while I talk about the STD mitigation video game that I would like to watch, which I think it's very tricky, right? Because you don't want to be. I don't know if it's a visual novel. I hate to always fall back on visual novels, but like I do think there is something that's just like you're trying to help people that sometimes really appreciate it, but like you're basically always giving bad news. Like it might be something like where you are the person who goes to people's homes after their service member partner has been killed, and like dealing with that. I don't know if that is that might be a very bad analog for what it's like to do STD work, but I do think the mechanics of it would be very much like you're doing an important service that also nobody likes it when you do. And I wonder if there'd be an interesting way to represent that mechanically. Like, I don't know if it's, I don't want to say anything because like there are so many STD work is already so stigmatized. I don't want to be like, oh, it's like, cleaning up like a car. Cause that's like, oh, because everybody with STDs are dirty. And it's like, that's not what I'm trying to say. It's already such a complicated thing. And it's like, maybe there shouldn't be an STD mitigation video game, but that's what I was thinking when I was thinking about this. But, do you have any ideas for an extremely metaphorical game about your field?
I have one, but unfortunately it's no longer possible because the Kellogg's company has betrayed us. But, had they not, I would offer myself as a branded Keebler Elf cookie production game that is about project management. In the sense of like, again, it's like necessary work that nobody likes when you do. Nobody likes to be told that they can't do something or that they need to do something faster and maybe not to the level of perfection they want to do it. And I think mechanically, the way it could be possibly satisfying was to start maybe as a project management game where you have to like prioritize a bunch of tasks and then slowly you add the human element of like getting to know your coworkers, and then maybe that person who's slacking has something going off. Maybe that elf has lost his hat and he can't make cookies without the hat. And the reason it's branded is because I want money.
I mean, yeah, no. Again, Mortified 100% open for basically any. We'll take anyone's money. Maybe not. I guess probably not.
Some limits.
Yeah, like probably not like. Raytheon,
yeah,
probably
Northrop
not any.
Grumman, don't.
Probably not any NFT people, but
oh no, fuck! This is a fuck NFTs program, absolutely.
Yeah. But if you're only slightly terrible, like, listen, if Audible wants to give us them Audible checks, we'll sell out for that 100%.
1,000. But yes, I mean, like, it's a tricky question. I'm being fairly facetious. But it's hard to come up with. I think the thing that makes Chicory so special is that the feeling of like pressure and having people critique your work all the time and being kind of open to this, the pressure of like legacy and just the way that the main character is handled and like the sort of atmosphere of the game is so moldable to like different experiences that it's even though it's about painting, it could be applied to like different fields, different things, different emotions. And when I think about why I like project management and why I like to do it, it's really hard for me to think of a game that's like, hey, if you spend 30 minutes making this Excel file really, really pretty, it'll make someone's life a lot easier. I don't know how to translate that into something fun, because the things I find fun aren't fun for people. Nobody likes charts.
Listen, I guarantee... Listen, there is definitely a subset of people that would love to do an Excel-based video game, so don't let your dreams stay dreams, is all I'm saying.
I'll find... That's my niche. It's charts people. Yeah. Cool. You got anything? Any other thoughts?
No, I mean, it's a good game.
It's a great game.
Yeah, you should check it out.
Yeah, go paint your world and then tweet your GIFs of your maps at us. I want to see them. They're cute.
They are cute. Leyla, when we are not grappling with imposter syndrome, where can people find us on the internet?
At LEYLSES on Twitter, Tumblr, and I guess again Instagram. I am currently working on my webcomic. Yay! It's moving along. It's in production. So watch out for that. What about you?
You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL, where I tweet about health policy and tabletop RPGs. You can listen to the other podcast I do at The Bible Boys. Depending on how much it snows in Virginia, we will either be doing an episode on the blind side or a special episode with a special guest, which Mortified listeners should tune in for. So we'll figure that out tomorrow, I guess. Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Leyla, as we are putting our easels away, saying goodbye to Chicory, what should we leave our listeners with to ponder over the week?
Some wisdom from the Temple of Wielders, which is to say, we alter our perspective in search of butts!
We'll see you all next week.